I wrote this short story about a female main character who takes revenge by killing a bunch of men because I support women's rights, but even more than that, I support women's wrongs. What up, gamers? So today's video is going to be a little interesting. Last semester, I took this creative writing class, which was super fun, and I thought it would be cool to read some of the stuff I wrote for that class. So just a little background on my experience with creative writing and stuff. Growing up, I used to be really into reading, really into writing, to the point where throughout elementary and middle school, I really wanted to be a writer and specifically also a teacher for some reason. Up until like late high school, a goal of mine was to get on the New York Times bestseller list, which is low-key kind of random, but as I got more into booktube and like reading books more critically, I was like, actually writing a good book is pretty hard, so I kind of gave up on the whole author thing. But yeah, growing up, I really enjoyed writing like random stuff for fun, but this class was the first time since like high school or middle school where I was writing creatively again. So it was definitely a really fun experience, and I learned a lot about like different styles of writing or like formats. So I wanted to share a couple of the works I wrote for this class. So I'm just gonna go in chronological order so you can see the development of my writing throughout the semester. So the first project we had was called the abecedarian essay. And basically it's like, I guess, a poem where each line starts with a different letter of the alphabet. So the first line starts with A, and then B, C, D, etc. Like, you know how the alphabet works. Yeah, but for this project, our professor wanted us to write about something we regret. So I wrote about the time I drank too much, ate a bunch of McDonald's, and then threw up. And when I say I drank too much, I meant water, obviously. Without further ado, I present my abecedarian essay, which is called Suffering Bastard. Now that I'm looking at this, it's kind of cringe to read your writing out loud, but oh well, I have to make this video. Alex and I wanted to try the Suffering Bastard. The drink was a self-fulfilling prophecy waiting to happen. Balancing the cocktail recipe book on her knee, Izzy crushed some bitters with the back of her knife, then poured in the ginger beer. Carelessly, I did not wait for the telltale fuzzy feeling to emerge before downing a second cup. Ironic, considering I was much more responsible as a less experienced drinker. DoorDashed French fries and chicken nuggets had just arrived from McDonald's, perfect for satiating our drunk cravings. Eating fry after fry, I relished the salty taste as it overpowered the aerosolized alcohol I was exhaling. Flames from the fire pit mixed with the humid summer air, dampening my skin. Faint fairy lights hung above our heads, twinkling like stars in the dusklight. Guffawing, I bowled over. The hilarity of my friends compounded as a haze creeped into the edges of my vision. Here we were, basking in the setting sun of summer before our final year of college. It was well past midnight before we were ready to leave, but I needed to use the bathroom first. Just as I closed the door, I felt a familiar twinge in my stomach. Keeping my hair bundled up in my right hand, I put up the toilet seat with my left. Lamely, I crouched there, heaving, as my precious nuggets and fries left me. I really should know better by now. Mushroom pizza, charcuterie board brie, more delicious foods I had previously overindulged on while drinking irresponsibly. Now it was getting ridiculous. Overdue, past overdue, to regain some self-control. Pretty sure it wasn't merely the alcohol. I barely felt its effects, but drinking quickly while also feasting on fries certainly did not help. Quite an accurate name, Suffering Bastard. That's what I was, hunched over the toilet. Relieving as it was, vomiting was truly a humbling experience. Sour acid coating my throat, an acrid smell filling my nostrils, the liquefied regret jetting into the toilet. This was not going to happen again. Undoubtedly, I liked feeling buzzed, but the physical damage that was possibly accompanying it was unnecessary. Very irresponsible, too. With this in mind, I formed a goal for this semester. No throwing up at all! Xerox a poster with that quote and hang it up, I should. You should know, several weeks in and I'm still going strong. Zealous overconsumption is a thing of the past, though it is my birthday this weekend. It was in fact my birthday that weekend, but no, if you saw my last video, you know, nothing happened. Nothing related to partying, that is. Reading these, I'm kind of realizing I like slur my words, so that's great. Obviously the title really pulls you in, and that was the name of the actual drink, which my friend Alex chose because he thought it looked funny. And I thought it looked funny, but I like the ingredients too, so I was like, I want to try that. And the joke is pretty obvious, like, you drink the Suffering Bastard and you become a suffering bastard. But for this abecedarian essay, it felt pretty poetic. But yeah, my professor really liked this one, and she actually recommended I submit it to our school like art magazine that they publish every semester. So I did, and it actually got accepted. So I don't think they've printed them out yet, but when they do, I'll definitely show you guys. So this next work is a complete 180, complete shift in tone from my previous one. So this one is the POV project. Basically, what our professor wanted us to do is practice writing in different types of point of view. So there's third person limited, where it's obviously in third person, but you can also access one specific character's thoughts. There's also multiple selective omniscience, where it's third person but you can see multiple characters' thoughts. There's Fly on the Wall, where it's third person but you can't see anyone's thoughts. And then obviously there's also like first person or second person. And basically what our professor wanted us to do is write a story, the same story but in two different points of view. But over time that expanded to where like it could just be one cohesive story, where like maybe the first point of view is like what happens in the first half, and then the second point of view is what happens in the second half. So that's what I ended up doing because I felt like that was more interesting than just writing the same thing but from two different points of view. I'll be referencing my previous video a lot because I mentioned the incident, but this thing completely affected my semester, and at times I would get really angry about it, and that would fuel my writing. So this project is very angry and very fueled by the incident. This is actually kind of cool because this is the first time I've ever used creative writing as an outlet for like stress and anger, and I think it like turned into a really interesting product. But this story really is like focused on a very specific, almost irrelevant detail that kind of came up during like this whole thing. Honestly, I think it's kind of cool how I turned that into a whole story, and one of the characters in this story is actually based on a real person. I'll let you guys guess who that is. Okay, without saying too much, I think of this story as a feminist revenge story with some murder. But just a trigger warning as well, this work mentions / makes allusions to past sexual assault, and it's not graphic or explicit or anything, but just know that's there. And also gory violence, because where's a revenge story without some violence? But yeah, that's my quick little intro for this story. And I present to you Consequences. Part 1. Cold. Bitter cold. Despite classes having started nearly 10 minutes ago, students still milled around the sidewalks, clutching scarves and burrowing into their coats. Gray clouds hung in the sky, threatening to unleash rainfall on the pedestrians below. Several stories above them, a woman sat hunched on the roof of the university library, unseen by the world. Adjusting her binoculars, she spotted her target. Sporting an expensive suit and over-gelled haircut, he strode steadily towards the administration building, his gait emanating self-importance. Her hands shook at the sight of him. Soon, she muttered, taking measured breaths. Soon. It was nearly nightfall by the time the dean of students made his way home, unaware of the threat that awaited him. He barely made it 2 steps through his front door before a cloth was pressed firmly against his face, suffocating him. He struggled fruitlessly, inhaling the sweet chemical scent, before darkness fell before him. He woke up tied to a chair, the rope so tight his limbs felt numb. A single light bulb hung above him, casting his surroundings in shadow. He could faintly make out the outlines of dusty shelves stocked with old trophies and forgotten belongings. Panic began to set in at the realization of his predicament, scattering his thoughts. Kidnapped. Tied up in his own basement. Would anyone even hear him if he screamed? "Help!" he wailed. "Somebody help me!" "I wouldn't do that if I were you." He stared at the voice. Its owner emerged from the darkness, knife in hand. She seemed young, but there was a haunted look about her. Her hair, recently dyed ash black, contrasted starkly with her pale countenance. Her cheeks were bony and gaunt, almost skeletal. A jagged scar sliced through her left eyebrow. Only her eyes seemed to carry any life within them, glinting like sparks. "Do you know who I am?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Quiet, but steady. Determined. "No, I have no idea," her captive gasped. "What do you want from me?" At once, she was in his face, the spark in her eyes now a wildfire. "You don't remember me, Dean Kingston? Really? After everything you did?" She tapped at the scar on her brow. "Think about it." Kingston squinted at her, fighting his haze of fear to dig through his memories. His eyes widened in recognition. "Chrissy?" "It's Christina now, actually." Chrissy sat in Dean Kingston's office, looking impossibly small in the upholstered leather seat. Her tousled brown hair partially obscured the large purple bruise that encircled her arm. She bore a similar mark on her hip, where her assailant had grabbed her. A bandage covered the fresh cut on her brow, which she had gotten from being pushed into a doorframe. "So, what are you gonna do?" she asked. Dean Kingston sighed, folding his arms. "Honestly, Christy, there's nothing I can do." "What do you mean? Can't you expel him, or at least suspend him or something?" "Such punishments will show up on his permanent record, barring him from any lucrative careers in the future. He just made a mistake. I'm not going to let a mistake like that ruin his future." "His future? What about my future?" Chrissy was incensed. "Everywhere I go, every corner I turn, I don't know if he'll be on the other side. I don't feel safe here." Dean Kingston frowned at her, his expression almost patronizing. "That disappoints me to hear, Chrissy. This is a very safe campus. Incidents like this rarely happen. That, coupled with the fact that you were intoxicated when it occurred, do not help the credibility of your story." Chrissy stared in disbelief. "I literally have a cut on my head from when he pushed me. I fought back. If you checked him right now, you'd find marks on him. You'd find the proof." Dean Kingston fixed her with a stern look. "Careful now. It's starting to sound like you're the one who assaulted someone." Chrissy stood up so fast her chair knocked over. "Fine. Don't believe me. I guess this conversation is over then." She was nearly out the door before Dean Kingston replied. "False accusations are a malicious virus, Chrissy. They damage the credibility of everything you say. If that happens, I want you to remember, this is what happens when you lie. These are the consequences for your actions." Christina glared down at Kingston. Ironic how, several years ago, she was the one who sat powerless as he towered over her, ready to decide her fate. Unfortunately for him, she held all the power now. She ran a finger across the blunt edge of the knife, admiring how it glinted in the dull light. Her hands, which had been trembling since she first laid eyes on Kingston this morning, stilled as soon as she felt the cool metal against her skin. "Why did you do it, Dean Kingston?" she asked quietly, fixing him with a cold stare. Do what? Why did you let him get away with it? Did you seriously believe I made it all up?" She raised the blade to his throat. "Tell the truth now." "I couldn't let a small mistake like that ruin his life. The boy had his whole life ahead of him." "Ruin his life? What about my life? You're the fucking dean of students. You were supposed to help me. Instead, you made excuses. Let him move on like nothing happened. I didn't get that luxury. Everyone believed that bullshit lie you started. They thought I made the whole thing up. Why do you think I dropped out less than a month later?" Her grip had tightened on the knife during her tirade, causing it to dig into Kingston's skin. Beads of blood trickled down his neck like scarlet tears. I'm sorry," Kingston whimpered. "I should have helped you. But please stop, Chrissy. Please don't hurt me." "This is what happens when you lie, Dean Kingston," said Chrissy stonily. Without warning, she shoved the knife into his chest, relishing the gratifying thunk as it tore through muscle and pierced bone. "These are the consequences for your actions." Part 2. Life had really worked out for Luke Harrison. Within a few months of graduating, he was already the top executive manager at his local accounting firm. Sure, his father was a CEO, but everyone knew he got there because of his stellar work ethic. If you want something, then take it. That was his personal motto. It served him well. He always got what he wanted. His old college roommate told him what happened to Dean Kingston. Scary shit. Such a shame too. He really liked that guy. Helped him out when he was in a bind a couple years back. He hadn't expected her to be conscious enough to know what was happening, much less fight back so hard. He still had that scar on his shoulder from where she bit him, crazy bitch. That's what he got for buying Rohypnol from a crap-ass dealer. But no matter, no one believed her anyway, thanks to the dean. It's a shame she ended up leaving the school though. He liked seeing her around, liked the look of terror that crossed her face whenever she noticed him watching her. It was strange too. Recently, he had been feeling that same eerie sense he was being watched. His neck always prickled, as if anticipating an attack. What was it that happened to Dean Kingston? Luke had looked up a news article about it after his conversation with Reggie. Someone tied him up and killed him in his basement? The police said nothing had been stolen from his house, so they believed it was a targeted attack. Why would someone want to murder the dean of a college? Luke sipped on his whiskey, eyeing the dark-haired woman sitting on the other side of the bar. She donned a slinky black dress, complete with a leather jacket and knee-high boots. She caught him staring and returned the look with a wry grin. Something about her. Nothing like a stiff drink and a good lay to wind down after a hard week of work. Without further thought, Luke stood, drink still in hand, and stumbled towards her. "Hey, baby," he slurred, leaning against the bar top. "Nice jacket. It will look great on my bedroom floor." She smiled up at him, that same sardonic smile. The distaste it displayed spurred him on. Luke loved a challenge, and hateful bitches took the longest to break. But maybe she wasn't such a hateful bitch after all, because she leaned in, close enough for him to catch a whiff of her flowery perfume. "Hey, Luke, wanna get out of here?" Luke grinned dumbly. "Fuck. Yeah." She led him out of the bar by his shirt sleeve. He tried to wrap his arm around her, but she shoved him off. Normally, he'd keep trying, but his limbs felt strangely weak. How many drinks did he have? Finally, they made it to her car, and just in time too. He was barely able to get the door open before collapsing onto the seat. She started the engine and pulled onto the street. For a few moments, the car was silent except for the gentle hum of the engine, until Luke spoke up. "How did you know my name?" She looked up at him, that wry look back on her face. "Can I tell you something, Luke?" He nodded, the action closer to a bobble of the head than a proper nod. "A few years ago, one of my classmates did something to me. Something really fucked up. Something you should never do to another person. I went to the dean of students, but instead of helping me, the dean helped my classmate instead. He cared way more about what could happen to my classmate if the truth got out than what did happen to me. After that, my classmate went around telling the whole school how I lied, how I told the dean I was attacked because I was a stupid whore looking for attention. Do you know what I would do to that classmate if I had the chance, Luke?" "What would you do?" Luke slurred. "I would watch him, see how life has been treating him after all these years. Think about how the dean completely fucked me over while my classmate is doing better than ever. I would follow him to his favorite bar, spike his whiskey while I was in the bathroom, and watch him down a couple drinks. Then I would lure him into my car, take him to his house, and separate his intestines from the rest of his body. Do you know what I would say to him then?" Luke was barely conscious now. "What would you say?" Christina smiled at him, a true smile this time. "This is what happens when you lie, Luke. These are the consequences for your actions." Slit. Just like she did to him. Hey! Yeah, I'm realizing now that I attempted to do voices, but probably didn't do that great of a job. Oh well. I feel like the story was like a pretty typical story that you would expect about this topic, and I really just like did not pull any punches in how douchey I made the Luke character and the dean, to the point where it was like maybe even like stereotypical, but low-key that was kind of the point. From pretty early on when I was writing the story, I thought it would be cool to have some kind of line that is repeated and used in a way that feels like poetic justice. So I wanted a line that the dean could say to the main character that the main character could then repeat back to him. And that is somewhat applicable in both the context that they're set in. So I kind of had to like shape it throughout time, and then eventually I came up with those lines. This is what happens when you lie. These are the consequences for your actions. But yeah, I'm really proud of that story. This next work is a modified sonnet. So similar to a regular sonnet, there's 14 lines and 10 syllables per line. But for this, we didn't have to follow any like rhyming structure and the structure of a typical line where like each line is a phrase or a sentence. So basically you could have sentences that go like past the line breaks. Normally sonnets have a twist partway through as well, so that's something else we had to incorporate. Once again, this was during one of my bouts of anger, so this one is more direct. It very much hits the incident on the nose. So this is the perfect senior year. Senior year started at an all-time high. After surviving COVID, struggling to make friends, and applying to grad school, I was finally almost free to relax and enjoy the remaining months of school, to cherish small moments. A lively group of friends, always laughing, inside jokes and fun drives. A picture-perfect final year. But you treat friendships like convenience stores, grabbing what you need and leaving when you're satisfied, without a care for ransacked shelves or discarded wrappers. To live with such blissful carelessness must make life so easy. I hope your senior year sucks too. So for this sonnet, from the get-go, I kind of knew I wanted to talk about this topic. I started out forming the convenience store metaphor because I was thinking about like, oh, like these people who ditched us, these friends, they stuck around when they were having fun, and then as soon as things stopped being fun, they just ditched. So like friends of convenience, basically. So that's what led me to convenience store. And then I started thinking about what metaphors I could make related to that. So that's why I say like ransacked shelves and discarded wrappers. I was thinking of how you can like mess up a convenience store basically, and that's like a metaphor for like when things get messy. It's literally when things get messy, because that's what that is. But yeah, since I'm a sassy bitch, I had to put in the I hope your senior year sucks too at the end. Okay, so this last one, this was part of my final project. So one of the options we could do is re-envision some of the works that we've written. So you take maybe like your abecedarian essay, but you rewrite it in a different format, like maybe as like a sonnet, for example. So what I did was I rewrote my POV project, like the short story, and I rewrote it as a pantoum. So I didn't read my pantoum for this video because I thought it was like mid, but basically a pantoum is a poem where there's 4 lines per stanza, and lines 2 and 4 of the first stanza become lines 1 and 3 of the next one, and then lines 2 and 4 of that stanza become lines 1 and 3 of the next stanza, and so on. And you can change a couple words to make them fit better in the lines, but that's kind of up to you. So obviously this is about my short story, so the same trigger warnings apply. So this is consequences, re-envisioned. This is what happens when you lie. These are the consequences for your actions. Who would care about a woman crying for help when men cry louder? These are the consequences for your actions. A slap on the wrist when men cry louder than the boy who cried wolf. A slap on the wrist for destroying someone's mind, body, and soul. Even the boy who cried wolf learned his lesson in the end. Destroying a man's mind, body, and soul might be the only way he learned his lesson in the end. These are the consequences for his actions. For this one, I wanted to repeat that recurring line that I mentioned earlier, and I'm pretty proud of this one too, because obviously I really liked the short story I wrote, and then I liked how I was able to translate it into a pantoum and keep the central themes of the original story. So obviously I just started with that line I mentioned before about this is what happens when you lie, these are the consequences for your action, because that's the recurring line that comes up throughout the story. And then I like the comparison of like the boy who cried wolf, because obviously the boy who cried wolf was full of shit, and then he learned his lesson the hard way. So then I'm able to like draw it back at the end and reconnect it back to my story about how it's revenge. So there's something kind of satisfying about the line that's destroying a man's mind, body, and soul might be the only way he'll learn his lesson in the end. So that's the character Christina like taking her revenge. And then I end with a recapitulation of these are the consequences for his actions. Because not only is that similar to the last line in the story, but it also takes you to the beginning of the pantoum as well. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it kind of interesting or something. Yeah, maybe I'll get back into writing for fun. I was also thinking about like if I wanted to share these somewhere so you guys could like read them more easily. I'm not sure if I want to do Google Docs. I feel like the format for Google Docs is the best, but it's just like random links. So I was also thinking of making maybe like a Notion website page, but whichever one I end up doing, maybe I'll put links in the description so you guys can read them directly. But yeah, that's all for this video. Just some other updates, I guess. Obviously, I'm back at school. I have like a relatively lighter semester because I'm not taking any bio classes. Yeah. And I'm only taking 3 classes. So I'm hoping to actually get like a somewhat consistent upload schedule for once. In the past, there was like one span of like a few months where I actually uploaded like every week. But you know what? To be realistic, I'm gonna strive for one video every other week. So yeah, maybe it's actual consistent YouTuber time. But yeah, as I said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!